Yeah, Dave's not here to do it.
I know, I was like, how do we start without you two doing...
Well, it was just me. I was just doing recording in progress with my hands. Recording in progress. Yeah.
I was just delighted that it wasn't happening. I'm sorry, Sophie. But yeah, Dave might be back next week. We'll see. I think it could happen. But yeah, so again, it's just you and me. And this week we watched your choice.
My choice out of a list of,
your choice out of a list of my choices. No, you're right.
Of like that you had just found as convenient movies on Netflix that were around 90 minutes, I believe. Yeah.
So it was I See You, which is...
You know, when I went to watch it last night and I was like, what's it called again? So I just searched Helen Hunt in Netflix and it popped, and I was like, this is a great search function. Sorry.
Do you know what I also laughed at? So I watched it last night and then realized within the first like 2 minutes that I have seen it already. I don't know when. It might be in lockdown 4, 5, 6. I don't know. Like somewhere in my delirium of watching all the horror, I must have watched this. But what was really funny watching it again was that I vaguely knew what was going to happen. I couldn't remember. Like, I mean, and you'd think like with the twist and whatnot, you think you would remember. Did not. I remembered being disappointed in it when I watched first. That's all I could remember. I had a visceral thing of like, I know something in this bothers me, and I know that more than one thing bothers me. Could not remember what it was until I watched all of it. Don't think it's a terrible film, but don't love it. What do you think?
I think I went in with like incredibly low expectations, because as I said, there was one night when I was back for Christmas and me and JP were looking through stuff, and it ended up being like, and I can't remember between whatever we saw and then like this movie, and we didn't pick this movie, and I was just a bit like, I don't know, like it's just, but to be honest, I thought it was much better than I thought. But then I also found like the story, like it's not going to ruin it, but it's like you see half the movie and then they play the movie again from someone else's point of view. And it's like, I don't hate that as like a storytelling like tool, but also it just really dragged for me. Yeah. I got to the point where I was, by the end, I probably checked every 5 minutes how many minutes there were to go. And again, this is like an hour and a half movie, and I was like, it is really interesting that we just see all these events, like this weird stuff is happening, and then basically we get the same movie played again from someone else's point of view, or explains all these weird events. But then I was like, oh God, you're literally doing the whole thing play by play again. And I was like, nah. So I think like that, that made it feel like it was too long for a movie that was not that long, because I felt like I was watching another movie.
And I think my issues with it, so like, I think I like a lot of the ideas in it. I thought it was a bit different. I thought that while it's not really out and out horror, probably more thriller than horror, it did have jumpy moments. It did have some twists, but my main criticism of it really is the real lack of character development. Yeah. And I mean, I know we're talking horror here, and I know I should be nicer to this film given what we watched last week, let's face it. It wasn't a bad horror. It just was, you see a film that's got Helen Hunt in it and you think she's going to be great. Like, Helen Hunt is fantastic. This is going to be really good. They're going to really use this character. And I feel that it was just all wasted. And, the fact that, so she's in half of the film, but not really the second half. And the fact that there's supposed to be this affair, which we'll get into in a bit, but like, there's no character development. There's no real warmth between, like, I mean, I get there's supposed to be tension in the family, but like, there's nothing to hold on to in this film.
Yeah. It's just kind of, you get to the point where you're like, I just really haven't made an emotional connection with anyone, to the point that like, I sort of don't really care what happens to a lot of these people, which I think is bad in a movie where we're meant to care what's happening to people.
And I do feel like the twist, like the actual murderer, I do feel that did really throw me. I didn't see it coming, but I think in a bad way, I feel like I still find it completely unbelievable that he was the killer.
Yeah.
But anyway, but we can go from the start, because I think what I like, so the beginning of the film, you know, it's a little US quiet, rural,
Small
beautiful
town, very
trees,
cute.
people,
Like,
kids
yeah,
getting ice creams, and it starts with a young boy, must be about 10 or something,
I believe he is 10. Yeah.
cycling home, but through woods, and like they're doing a lot of like overhead camera angles, like drone camera type idea, which I also quite like. I think there are some nice points where it's quite a pretty film.
Yeah.
And that starts, and then you get this real supernatural vibe right at the start of the
I do
film.
like, because it literally looks like he's riding through the forest, and then it looks like he just gets like thrown backwards off his bike by like the force. Where I
Yes.
was like, what is this movie about? I think that's one bit I did enjoy, because like when you get the explanation to everything happening, you're like, okay, like that makes sense. I mean, it's weird and far-fetched, but okay, fine. But I did really like that, like, yeah, in the first bit when you don't know what's going on, you're just like, okay, is this like, to me that's aliens, and then you get a bit where like, is it ghosts, and then you get a bit where you're like, no, it's a stalker. And so it's that thing where I did enjoy that, where they just kept going like all these weird things with no explanation. You're just like, what is this movie about? And then you're like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is one of the things that I liked about this, was that it did keep you guessing a lot about what on earth, what is the scary part of this film?
Yeah.
Because we start with this kid getting thrown in the air, and then we jump to suburban house, and Helen Hunt, whose character I can't even remember, but making pancakes.
It's not Janet. Does it not start with a no? Jackie. I was like, it starts with a J.
Jackie. Of course, I've got my Wikipedia.
That's very
Fountain of all
important.
knowledge.
We're great at following what happened in a movie we saw yesterday. I think.
Yeah, I know. And actually, I only finished watching it today, so really, and have seen it before, but still didn't remember names. But Jackie is making pancakes. Seems a bit out of sorts.
Yeah.
Trying to give her son Connor pancakes, but he's grumpy with her. Turns out that her husband Greg is sleeping on the sofa.
Well, I remembered like Jay, and then I didn't remember any of the other names.
Yeah.
So, like,
Again,
on your Wikipedia. Yeah.
Yay. So ultimately, there's clearly been some drama in the house. The son Connor is clearly on his dad's side with whatever's happened. And then we find out that the dad is a police officer, and he's been called in on this case of this abducted young boy that we'd seen at the start, and then starts having these discussions about how similar this is to a prior case in the past where young boys were abducted, and then these green pen knives were found.
I would call it a Swiss Army knife, but I believe it's the same thing, right? Like, it's just a little green. It looked like a Swiss Army knife to me.
Yeah, it's just the wee one, but it's like it reminded me of the ones that as a kid in Scotland, of course you have a pen knife, but it's not got all the different attachments. It's just a knife.
It's like a flick knife.
It's just a flick knife. Yeah.
Flick knife in a Swiss Army knife case, and it's green.
But the difficult thing when he's getting pulled into this case is that there are all these abductions and murders, I believe, prior, but someone has been convicted. So it's worrying that they're seeing these parallels, because have they convicted the wrong man? Is it a copycat?
Yeah, there's like basically someone in jail for these crimes, and now these crimes seem to be happening again. And it's like, yeah, that's disturbing.
Yeah. And around all of this, so like this is the bit I also struggle with at the start of the film, because other than him being like, because you're struggling to know what is the main theme of this film for quite a lot of the film, because
I agree.
You are watching him being the police officer, but a distracted police officer because his wife has had an affair, and then you're also seeing all this stuff going on in the household, and again you're kind of thrown a lot of the time. So the wife is a therapist, a psychiatrist, psychologist.
Yeah, or I think he refers to her as a counselor or something, but also she is Dr. someone. Yeah. So she's like a therapist-ish.
And so it's known in the police force that he's having issues with his family. Well,
so I mean, that guy that he talked to about it, like, and it's just, his name started with an S. Anyway, like he seemed to be like a mate though, right? Like I feel like he had shared that because like they were actually, because that's right. So because when he's being briefed on this thing, it's like, it's your case, and he's like, oh, insert name of person that have you found?
It's Spitsky.
Spitsky.
So his partner on this case, Spitsky, was in the prior. He was the one that was convicting.
Because I think he chose that though, right? Because he went like, oh, does Spitsky know about this? And she's like, it's your case, you can do whatever. And it's like, he will want to know. So it's like he brings Spitsky in, who then obviously goes like, yeah, because it was the case, the previous case. And I feel like him and Spitsky are mates, and that's why Spitsky is like trying to give him advice on like marriage and stuff. And like we went to see, that's right, he's like, we went to see a counselor, and then that's when he's like, Jackie is a counselor. And then
you're still like, but that doesn't necessarily
matter. Yeah.
And meanwhile, like all we get from Helen Hunt's character, so Jackie, is a lot of vacant stares at times. So she's
been so heavily made up that her features look airbrushed out. I found every time she came on camera, her face was distracting to me, because I feel like they'd just gone, it's like, yeah, she looks like Helen Hunt, she's aged a bit, but I just felt like they went just like completely make her, I don't believe that's what her face normally looks like in real life. But to the point that I was just like, every time she was on camera, I wasn't concentrating on what she was doing or what she was saying. I was waiting for like an angle where she had a face that looked like a face, not like a sunken ghost. It was really, I was like, what are we doing to Helen Hunt?
I'm the same. And also I feel like, because her mouth had almost disappeared.
Yeah.
And yes, it was all really strange, but like I think there was a lot of, when we were jumping to her, where you're like, is she just a bit, so she was taking a lot of Ambien, and she seemed like she was just spaced out a lot.
Yeah, like spaced out, like you're right, lots of vacant looks, like obviously like, yeah, a lot of internal struggle happening.
And that's the thing, it was, still nothing really talked about enough with her partner or with her son. And so weird things were happening, like the silverware was taken from
so there's this like series of events. It was like, the morning where like she's made the pancakes, like her and the son are not getting on, she leaves. It turns out that the husband, Greg, had been sleeping on the couch. The son goes to talk to him. You can tell, like the son is on like the husband's side. And then something like, so she's
lost her mug. So the first thing that's lost, she can't find her mug that has a sunflower or a flower on it. So she can't find that. And I
was even going to say that, like, she calls him and is just like, there's all this weird fucking stuff. Yeah, so it's like she calls him and then is just like, I made pancakes. And he's like, you really called me about pancakes. And then she gets off the phone looking sad. And then he throws his mobile phone at the wall, but it goes out the window and smashes. And then when he's doing that, he sees like a mug on the roof, which is the mug, and then goes up. And I would say there are two what look like half smoked joints in there. And he's like, oh, Connor. And it's just, but I find it really frustrating because it takes a long, it's like, okay, something's gone down. Obviously, it's Helen Hunt who's fucked up. Can you just tell it? Because I feel like it wasn't building in a way that I felt was helpful. It was just irritating. It got to the point where it was like, he's angry, she's apologetic, the son is angry. Can we not just like tell us what it is now, and then we can move on, because this bit is just annoying me. Because also it's like, he throws the phone out the window. It smashes the window. And then he reacts like, he's like, are you kidding me or something? It's like,
it's like,
you threw a phone really fast and hard at glass. Like, what? But then, so I was only about that because, then weird shit starts happening. So it's
so the first thing she lost was that mug, but then that gets explained away for us as the audience, because it seems like her
on the roof and the kid's taking it, is what we think.
But then the whole drawer, and it's so interesting because it's not just the silverware, because we see that drawer later on in the flashbacks. It also is like, I think like the cutlery holder and scissors and like, so that whole drawer is just empty, absolutely empty. So she's like, and we're like, again,
what's happened?
We're left as the audience still like, oh, well, I mean, again, that question of supernatural ghosts, or is she just not very well? Because we still are really unsure what's happening.
And then there's a time that so then when she's looked at the empty drawer, then she hears the sounds, and then it turns out that it's the window repair guy that the husband had called because he broke the window. And then you get like the next week, so you know she gets freaked out by that, and so you know you get like a little jump scare, like it's not a ghost, it's just a man repairing the window. As he's leaving, she's like, oh, who let you in? And then he refers to like her daughter, as in like he says one of your kids, like you have her trained very well. And so then there's this weird thing where it's like, okay, well there's one child and it's a boy child, not a girl child. Who's that? So you get your second bit of intrigue where you're like, someone let this person in and it was a woman. And then again, it's like, well, like, is this a supernatural thing? In which case ghosts technically can't interact with physical matter. Unless they're poltergeist, and that's different. It's not a ghost. It's a physical manifestation of someone's negative energy. But like, but yeah, so that's your second piece. So yeah, it's like we've lost the mug, we've lost all the like cutlery. Someone let the man in to repair the window, but who was it? And it's just, yeah.
And then we have the dude, Greg, the dad, also noticing things like, so they've got all these photos up their walls, but one of them is taken out and then another one's taken out. So like they're disappearing too. So there's weird things happening in the house, but nothing so monumental that it would seem really problematic. We've got Helen Hunt, we've got Jackie trying to make a huge effort with her son, makes a fancy dinner. That whole scene I just found frustrating and unnecessary. Yeah. And again, I know it's an 1.5 hour film, but it was like, she made a nice meal, he got angry. I don't know, like I couldn't.
And then he like, it was that weird thing where it's like, it was very, very awkward. She asked for the dressing. He like, basically like, what's it? It's not rolls.
Slides it.
Slide.
It's
like aggressively like slides it at her at speed. She manages to catch it, but then it's like he just loses it and like shouts at her for a bit, and then that's the end of that scene.
I guess maybe that is the reveal that she had the affair. I guess that was what that served, but it was just, I don't know, it's just not fun watching.
Oh yeah, because she asked, she's like, who did you let whatever she called him, like it wasn't window repairman, but did you let a contractor in or something? And then he was like, oh, is that what we're calling him now? The person you had an affair with, was that a contract? Yeah, I feel like that was just like you're right, there's a clumsy way of introducing the fact that she had an affair and like the kid was angry about it, and then that's what was causing this issue with like the dad as well. Yeah, of course.
And so the next day, her plan is to drive her kid to school. I don't know if it's tempting to get a better relationship with Connor. But problem was the dude that she'd had an affair with turns up at the back door.
Which is weird as well. Like if you're having an affair with someone, you don't turn up at their family home when you know that the husband and son live there.
I know. So that was another bit that I remember even the first time watching it, just getting really frustrated with, because also like there's again something really unbelievable about their relationship. So it's apparently like they'd known each other since they were younger, and then they'd had it off, and then she'd broken it off, the affair, but he wants them to get together. And that again, like I think so much emphasis in this film was placed on the idea over the actual script and characters that it just really frustrated me. So watching them interact, I felt scared in that stress tension, but also in that anger. This is just not believable.
Yeah. He wouldn't just turn up to her family home unannounced, like one assuming she's going to be there, even though it does seem to be like the middle of the day or the morning or something. And then I agree.
And also like I can imagine that could happen, but like you'd imagine if someone was doing it, they were being quite an agitated state or whatever. This was like an excitable guy going, yeah, we should get back together.
We should do this, let's go do these things. Like, yeah. And he's like, and she's like, yeah, you've got to basically be quiet. My son is home. Because there is an assumption that the son is home. And then we do get the thing where there is the mug is dropped on his head. So she then takes him inside, and there's this assumption that it's Connor who's done it because he's pissed off because like the mother's had an affair. So I get that bit is all believable, but I agree. Like it's like when he turns up and is an excited puppy dog unannounced, is like, we should do all these things, and he's trying to kiss her, and it's just like, what do you do? Like that's not how anyone conducts an affair. Surely. And
also, I
say that not having done it, but I'm sure that's not how you do it.
I also just found the fallout like weird. So it's like, so you think your son has thrown a mug at your ex-lover. So you're going to hide your ex-lover that's got a bleeding head in the basement?
In the basement.
But we think that your
the
son
son,
already knows. So
yeah,
I
so
don't
like,
know, there
so I
was
can,
something that
yeah,
just didn't work for me there, where I was like,
I'll hide him so I can take the son to school and he won't know about him, even though I think he's
he
the one
knows about him.
like,
So
injured.
I got really frustrated because I felt like it would just be a case of, he turned up, we were having a conversation, what are you doing? But like, no, it was just like, oh, I'll hide you in the basement, which again, totally lost me.
Yeah.
So she leaves him so that she can drive Connor to school.
Yeah.
And then she, while she's driving to school, we see that Todd, this ex-lover, is attacked in the basement.
Yeah. So basically he's like sitting in his little chair with his bleeding head. And then at some stage, like he gets up and decides to move and he's looking at something and then just gets like hit really hard on the back of the head and falls down, but in a killing blow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we don't know what's happened. And I think, I mean, maybe you can help me with some of the timelines in this too, but there had been some more strange things happening, but maybe they're after it, I'm not sure. But there was the point where at one point, I think maybe after she'd had a fight with Connor, Jackie is wandering around the house and like picking up his laundry and stuff, and there's a weird mask under his bed. I found that scene quite scary because, again, just because the mask, it's a freaky mask. There's a sort of froggy mask.
It's this really like grotesque froggy mask, and I feel like, you know, there's a lot of times where they use masks in horror movies as like a way of freaking people out because like you don't know who's under it, whatever. It's like something about that froggy mask that, like, I'll give them that. It was very fucking unsettling. Like,
and I think also it left me with a feeling of, is that just a mask under the bed or is there a person under the bed? And you know, there's that whole thing, like proper horror trope and childhood nightmares of there's something under my bed.
Like if I get out of bed and I put my foot down, something is grabbing it. Like, yeah, 100%.
So that I think was one of the scarier moments. And then there was another point where at one point Greg, the dad, is wandering about and he sees the hamster.
I think you're gonna say he wakes up and is covered in piss.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that bit.
That was a different one. But no, he does it. Yeah, so it's like he sees a hamster.
Yeah.
I presume it's someone's. I presume it's Connor's hamster.
I think it's Connor's hamster. And so he sees this hamster and he follows it. And he's like, why are you out?
He follows it to catch it, but in a way that it's like, have you ever tried to catch a hamster before? Because you are so ineffective right now. Yes. Like, you're walking really slowly and talking to it and spooking it. And it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then
I probably overthought that point too, of like, what is the best way to catch a hamster? I've never had a hamster.
I guess I did the same thing where I was like, I've
had guinea pigs, but the guinea pigs would have a tendency of just like flopping over and just stopping and whatever. They're not like, I was just thinking, like, what would you do in that situation? They're quite small.
I think I feel like you'd go up to it,
have some momentum and skip them up.
And then you'd grab it. Whereas he was just kind of, I'm slowly walking after the hamster and here's my dialogue that I'm saying while I'm ineffectively. Anyway, so yeah, he basically follows the hamster into like the walk-in wardrobe thing in Connor's room. And then and he's on his hands and knees and the hamster's cowering in the corner and then the door gets like slammed shut. And then he can't open the door and he's like shouting at Connor and he's like, you know, let me out, whatever. And then eventually Helen Hunt, what's her name? Jackie comes back and just opens the door and is like, well, what the hell are you doing? Like, and that's when he's like, where is Connor? And she's like, he's at school or whatever. What are you talking about? So I feel like and then there's another time that he wakes up in what would appear to be a puddle of his own.
Yeah, so after sleeping the first night, we see them on the sofa. The second night, he moves himself into the spare room. Yeah. And she tries to encourage him to just come back to bed because I think, you know, they are trying to repair whatever they can.
And like being like, and because I think she says like, you take the bed tonight, like you go into the bedroom, I will like sleep somewhere else. And he's like, no, it's okay. I've just moved some things into the spare room. Don't worry about it.
There is the one thing we've skipped over in all this too. There was an attempt to have a explanation of the Jackie and Greg relationship, which just didn't buy, where it was like, she is wealthier than him, the parents didn't approve of him, both are employed in decent jobs, but I guess maybe she's the money, like they're in this massive house and I guess maybe she's the primary breadwinner, but ultimately he does accuse her of only really being with him because she got pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah, the question was like, if you didn't get pregnant, like, would we actually be together? Because yeah, I think he prefaces it with like, why did you marry me or something. Very nice.
So I think this is a lot of trying to build sympathy for Greg. But ultimately, I just find them both just baffling. And
they didn't make sense to me as people, right? So which means that they're not good characters if I don't see them as actual people who would exist in real life.
And I just kind of felt like Connor should have left both of his parents because...
Just get out, mate. You're turning into a dick just like your parents. Just get out.
Leave them, get out of the house. So anyway, we jumping back to where we'd left off a minute ago, where Todd has been hit in the back of the head. So we don't know how that happened. We don't know what's going on. But what then later on happens, and this is cute. Like, so I've already complained about some stuff I don't like about the film. But I do remember this bit in particular is where I really started to not like it. The first time I watched it, and reminded again, second time I watched it, was where Jackie comes home, finds that Todd is dead, assumes that her son has killed Todd. Greg comes home similar time, and then they both decide that they're going to bury him in the woods or whatever. That is the bit for me as well that I'm suddenly like, what the hell is going on? And I
agree.
I got really angry because I kind of felt like I felt that this would have played out in so many ways, but I just did not. I mean, I guess maybe it gets explained later on, but I just would not have imagined the police officer character saying, all right, well, automatically this is what we do. More importantly, you can with him later on, but I don't believe she necessarily would have. Again, none of the reactions were believable, and also she didn't even have a real emotional reaction to her ex-lover being killed. So like, none of the responses to this I felt were believable.
Like,
and
I remember saw a dead body.
I remember being quite engrossed in the film the first time I watched it, and this was the bit in particular that took me out of it. And as I say, watching it again, I couldn't remember the film really very well. I remember weird bits, but I couldn't remember actually what happened. And then I got to that point again, I went, oh God, yeah, it's this bit. And that's the bit where the first time I watched that, it almost got me to turn it off, because I was just like, well, this is just nonsense now, right? Like,
you're right. Like, it's just dumb because it's like she thinks it's Connor, even though she's just dropped Connor off at school. So like that doesn't make any sense. And then like very conveniently, like Greg comes home, and then she runs to him and is just like, help me, like I need your help, whatever. And it's kind of like she's like pleading, not pleading, but it's like plea of like, help me, like I'm a defenseless woman, I can't do anything. And so then the conclusion by the cop is, let's hide the evidence by burying the body in the woods. And you're like, oh yeah, this all makes like a lot of fucking sense. Yeah,
and it's crazy. It's absolute nonsense. And while they're out, so they leave the house, which means Connor has left on his own in the house. Now we know there's been some weird stuff happening in the house, but we don't really know what the deal is. And also, like, at one point, both Jackie and Greg are self-medicating, because Greg starts to take hers.
Yeah, exactly. I presume I don't know what kind of doctor is, but my assumption was she prescribed those things for her, and then Greg was just like jumping in and grabbing some.
And and he was also like doubling up with them and stuff. So anyway, again, part of what was going on in the house, you could imagine to some extent, maybe it was like she was strung out, I don't know. But we have had the weird thing with the hamster being let out, but maybe they had let it out. We have had everything that has happened so far could be explained away. But then we get Connor sitting playing computer games, and he starts to get messages to him on the chat,
on his computer online. On the chat, looks like an iMessage, as it were.
And asking if he knows what frogging is, frogging with a PH.
Which sounds like, to me, it sounds like a gross sex act. Like, when do you know what frogging is? I was like, oh, like, well, it made.
And then he goes to Google it, and I'm like, no, don't Google that. Who knows what's going to be?
Yeah, but it's like 100% when they started talking about frogging, I was like, that sounds like a gross sex thing I don't want to know about. I didn't see it as, it's when you go and live in someone's house undetected for a number of days.
Because apparently it is a thing, right?
frogging just sound, no, I'm not even going to say what I think it sounds like, but I just think it doesn't sound like
Yeah,
that.
because I did look it up, because like, yeah, frogging, Urban Dictionary, frogging is a person secretly living in another person's home.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it is a thing. So that is when we start to actually learn a bit more what's going on, which leads us to think, there's someone in the house that's doing stuff. So ultimately, Connor is interacting with this dude, messaging him, but then we see in the background someone wearing the frog mask.
As Connor is watching a video that the dude has shared with him of like basically the like house security footage showing him
in the house
taking, and you see him take the silverware and put it in a sack. Because that's right, because at one stage, is that when Connor's by himself, that that's right, because he's playing his computer games and he hears something, and it's the missing silverware in a bag in the dryer.
Oh yeah.
So then Connor goes down. Yeah, that's right. So Connor goes down to investigate. And he's like, "This is fucking weird." Anyway, so he goes back to his computer, and then it's at that stage where like he gets the messages, and it's like, "Do you know what frogging is?" And then this video starts playing, and it's like, yeah, the guy basically stealing the silverware and like a random stuff. And as we're watching Connor watch this, right, then you've got like the figure that appears like behind Connor with the grotesque frog mask with the eyes and the squishy frog mouth area, and then you just grab Connor?
Yeah, because then we jump
the
to Jackie and Greg
Yeah.
coming back, and they find Connor tied up and drugged in the bathtub.
Yeah.
And that's when Greg tells Jackie to drive him straight to the hospital. And that's when Greg is searching the house, and we end with him being attacked by the dude in the frog mask.
That's right, because he does a thing with this. For some reason, he's upstairs and then he hears music, because it's always the thing. It's like someone who's sneaking around your house puts the record player
on, of course.
But he comes downstairs, that's right, he's got his gun and he's doing his like, I'm checking the rooms are clear, I'm a detective, whatever. And like as he's doing this constantly, you see the guy behind him like in the distance, and it's like, you're the worst detective ever. And then yeah, that's right, he comes around, sees the music playing, like turns it off, and then that's the guy comes in and just like beats him over the head.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. Like, so I mean, I guess maybe they're really good froggers, but like you're absolutely right about you're the worst detective ever, where I'm like, I can't, of all people whose house you're hiding in, like a detective's, and the detective, okay, I know he's got other stuff going on, but like the detective hasn't realized.
Yeah.
So the only other thing, before we jump to the bit where we flash back, the only other thing that has been happening coinciding with all of this that just feels like a distraction for so much of the film is that, of course, Greg is still investigating this case of the disappearing child. And they have, we learned that there were a couple of boys that had escaped from being captured by the dude who's now incarcerated. And they don't know where one of them is, but the other one, they go and visit him and his partner Spitsky, and this dude freaks out. But it's just so weird. Like, I feel that the whole case with the missing boys is just so clumsily incorporated into all of this that the whole first half of the film, you're like, I don't know what the hell is going on, and not in a good way, not in a like this is building suspense, more in a
it's not
this
like
doesn't work.
I'm annoyed. Like, what is this? Just tell me. Yeah.
So we then, coming back to Greg being attacked, we then flash back a couple of days to learn more about these people that are doing the frogging. And it's just such a, like, we go from these slick overhead shots and stuff to now handheld camera, and we learn that it sort of starts with Mindy and Alex. So Mindy is keen to be making a documentary about her life, which essentially is frogging. And so it cues to them getting access to the house when everyone's leaving for the day, because they run, the automated garage doors.
And they run
in. Before it closes, they run in, and then they start exploring this ridiculous house. And Mindy just talks about, how amazing this house is, and like how much wealth there is, which clearly there is. Like, I mean, this house is ridiculous. It's got an amazing view of the coast. And then she starts to explain how frogging works. The fact that, during the day the house is theirs. They can eat food if they want, but you have to be very careful not to have too much of one thing. It's all about making it unknown that they are living in the house, and during the night you have to hide somewhere that's unlikely to be. So, you know, she's trying to make this documentary. Alec is there to be our kind of film dude, but I mean, it's clear from the start that Alec is a shambles, and you kind of wish he wasn't there. And that's also the stressful thing of like, why has she even invited him along?
Yeah.
But we learn early on that Alec is the one that was keen to come along, but is also pushed for this particular house. So he chose this house, which is very important later on. But yeah, Mindy flags that they're going to stay. It's good that this house has got spare rooms. It's good to find a house with spare room, and it's got like an attic space off the spare room that they can hide in overnight, or well, pretty much not even overnight. From the moment people are expected home, they hide in there, and that's where they have to stay, and they only come out when no one's in the house.
Yeah.
Except Alec has clearly very different ideas about how frogging should be conducted.
Yes.
But as we realise later on, particularly for this family, and he's the one that starts messing about. He's the one that was smoking on the roof, that used the mug.
Exactly. Like there's this whole thing about like, the whole thing is you go in, you stay for like, I don't know, 5 days, and you get out and they don't even know you're there. Whereas like his thing to do is like just fuck with people. So it's right. So he was the one smoking on the roof. He stole all of the cutlery. He at some stage goes and pisses on the bed.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten that bit.
And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I mean, granted, I'm not a super heavy sleeper, so maybe I'm seeing this from my point of view. But if someone was pissing at me, and all of a sudden I was in moisture, I think I would wake up.
And not only pissing on you, but like standing on the bed, standing over you to do it.
Not even subtle. Like, because also, yeah, even that. Let's talk physics for 1 second, Karen. Like he's standing up. And so it's like, you've got the foot, like that stream is like coming from like quite a height that's going to make a sound. It's not like you're just like right there near the bed, just like secretly pissing. He is like exhibitionist pissing from a height at this person. I was like, you are literally making it, if you're going to get caught, you've made it the easiest thing to do. It's crazy. Like, so there's,
and also the weight in the bed will have shifted, and
all these crazy things. Like, I just like, don't piss at someone one, don't piss on someone else's bed while they're in it or at all, but two, don't do it from a great height if you're going to do it. That's my word of advice.
And so like, yeah, Alex doing all this stuff, and he's sneaking about with a frog mask on, and he's the one that's been taking the silverware and taking the pictures. And like Mindy is understandably getting more and more distressed because, you know, ultimately she's homeless, and she's like, he keeps moaning that this is really boring, but she's like, it sure beats sleeping on park benches and in subway stations. Like, this is what she does. This is what she does to survive. And he's like, oh no, but isn't part of the excitement about maybe getting caught? And she's like, no,
like part of the
excitement is never getting anywhere near being caught. So he gets more and more erratic and difficult, and we get more and more frustrated. And she's like, well, maybe you should leave. And they've had to hide their bags in the basement so that they can make a quick exit if they need to, if anything goes awry. But of course things do, but it's problematic because all these things that are happening, all the things that we thought were weird, it's all down to Alec.
Yeah, because there was even the explanation that when like they were in the spare room looking at stuff, and then like Greg comes up the stairs, so they go and hide in their little like crawl space, and then he does the thing where he smashes the window and whatever, and then basically it's her who lets the guy in, so that explains like why there's the door. So it's like, once that's happened, you're like, okay, so like that means that they're responsible for the piss, the cutlery, the missing mug with the cigarettes, like,
and even the mug. So the mug falling on Todd, that was Alec.
Alec just dropping it, like being like, it's such a dick.
But what is done quite nicely, I'll give the film this, is that because Alec seems so unhinged, it's really giving a build up that Alec is a problem, and Alec might have been the person that killed Todd. Alec, so I mean, I think they're trying as well to bring in that Alec may have been the person that abducted the children.
I know, I agree.
But that also was never believable for me the first time or second time I watched this film. But there was a point which I think we missed, was when Connor's found tied up in the bath. There is one of those green pen knives or Swiss Army knives, like stabbed into the soap next to it. So we know that the stories are in alignment somehow, but it's not really clear. But ultimately, even when Mindy brings up that another kid's disappeared, Alex seems really uncaring about it.
Not give a shit.
And so I think what they're trying to, well, I'm pretty sure what they're trying to do building this up is that Alec is perhaps the one that's abducting children and is one that's problematic and is, you know, ultimately Mindy's getting more and more worried, thinks he should go.
Right, yeah.
So they do decide that they should leave, but that's around about the time that Todd gets hit in the head. And then they're like, oh crap, our stuff's in the basement. So then we see Mindy going into the basement to try and get their bags once Jackie and Connor have left, not realizing that Todd's in there.
Yeah, that's right.
And so while she's in there trying to get their stuff, but making sure Todd doesn't see her, she witnesses him getting killed. And that's when we've got the first reveal. Yeah. The person that kills Todd is Greg, the dad. Yeah. So Greg with a baseball bat smacks his wife's lover and kills him. So all of this was maybe Connor and Jackie getting upset. It was all a big charade, and that Greg is essentially getting Jackie along with hiding his dirty work when they go and bury him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I guess even at that stage, like you're like, yes, very unbelievable, but like if we're talking about like the realm of like, you know, a made up movie universe, whatever, we're like, okay, he is so angry at Jackie and Todd, and he sees Todd and is like, I'm gonna fucking kill that guy. And you're like, it seems unbelievable, but like, I'll maybe give him that. Like, I feel like, because then you know, then I feel like the big reveal, you're like, this is dumb and it never would have happened. I feel like this one was dumb and very unlikely to happen, but you're like, let's just pretend that even though he's like a responsible detective man, he is so racked, is like with like his inner turmoil that he got cheated on by Jackie and this guy, that he's like, I'm just in a moment of rage, I'm going to kill this guy. I was almost going to give him that.
I agree until we find out what happens later. And I think that's when it raises.
That's what I mean. I was like, even here, it's like, you can kind of justify it from like, we're watching a movie and this is what happens in movie worlds. And he just lost it. And he just was so angry and he hit him with a baseball bat and it killed him. And it's like, fuck, I've got to hide it. That's okay, because Jackie found it. Now we can pretend it was someone else and we'll go bury him in the woods. Yeah.
And so when they go out, Mindy is, of course, horrified. But that is when she goes to go and tell Alec what has happened. And she's horrified by it all. And then discovers that Alec is the one that has drugged Connor and is dragging him into the bathtub.
That's right. She goes to find him and he's literally in Connor's room with this creepy mask, like just like hovering over Connor, like tying him up or something. Which again, so, like, I feel like that then is like, that's still like, is he the guy who's kidnapping all
the people? Exactly.
Yeah.
And so of course Mindy freaks out, but then ends up getting semi-accidentally belted down the stairs by Alec and then bangs her head. So then there's the next bit where I just find really weird, that he puts her in the car. Like, I mean, I think he was going to try, was he driving her away or something?
I presume that's like, he puts her in the car, he's going to go finish what he was doing with Alec and then
take her
to, he was just going to like later days with the car, right? He was just going to like steal the car and go and dump it. And
and so, okay, so question, so the Alec thing, the Connor thing, he's just wanting to scare Greg. There was never an intention to harm.
I think there was never an intention to harm Connor. Like, he's like obviously like fucking with the house, but like he's fucking with the house because it's the house that Greg lives in. I feel like, I do think that like it's all actually directed at Greg, and we find out why later. But yeah, like I don't believe that there was like an actual intention to hurt Connor the son, because I feel like that would go against why he's seeking revenge.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, not explaining any of this to Mindy, she doesn't know. So she's unconscious, she's in the car.
Yeah.
And Alec is in the car with her. And then at that point, this is when Jackie and Greg return from having buried Todd somewhere.
Yep.
So Alec goes and hides. And then, of course, that's when Jackie and Greg discover their son. Jackie drives away. So we're back at this point now. And now we get to see what Greg ends up doing. So Greg gets in his car, which has unconscious Mindy in it.
But like literally across the back seat.
Yeah.
Like not even hidden.
Because I thought she was in the trunk, but no, back
in
seat.
The first, I agree. I thought she was in the trunk, and then they cut back to the shot, and you're like, hold on, that guy got in a car, and it's like it's a car, so like you open the door and the light turns on, and in the process of getting into the driver's seat, he didn't even peripheral vision glance the unconscious woman on his back seat. Like, what is that?
So here's my next point, because this is also where I kind of get lost in this film too, where so he says to Jackie, take Connor straight to the hospital. I'll be right behind you.
Yeah.
But instead he gets in his car and drives to where
he's hiding.
He's got a little cabin.
Yeah.
And I also don't understand that point. And meanwhile, we've also got the police case going on, and they've been told to go and do stuff, but they can't find Greg. But ultimately, yeah. So what ends up happening? Mindy's in the back of the car. She regains consciousness. She sees the bag that had the baseball bat that she'd seen Greg kill Todd with.
Yeah.
She opens the bag, and then suddenly in the bag, this is police officer gold. If you find this back, this
right?
like hold all of this dude, it's got a baseball bat with blood of some victim on it. It's then got top. It had the top of
like a jersey of like the yes. It's kind of like if you're a detective, you know that you shouldn't keep all of your crime evidence in one convenient bag in the back of your car.
It was just wild. And so she then realizes that he has abducted the children, and we all realize that he's abducted the children, or it seems that way, that it wasn't Alec.
Yeah.
And so he stops the car.
Because I think he'd stopped the car anyway, because they were right near where the thing was. And then he gets out of the car, and when he's not paying attention, she gets out and just fucking runs. And in her process of running away from the car, happens upon this like little kind of caravan-y thing.
Yeah.
And then it's all of like what would be windows is like newspapered up. And then like she looks into a crack, but I don't think she sees anything.
No. And one thing I have to say though, in all of this, I'll give this film this, I like Mindy.
Yeah.
I like Mindy. I think Mindy is just trying to survive. I question her judgment about bringing Alec along.
Yeah.
But she did want someone to help her with filming frogging so she could do this documentary. But even, we usually question people in horror films. She does phone the police as soon as she's out of the car. As someone that is actually technically a criminal herself, that's always worried about because she's sleeping in people's houses.
Yeah, you're right.
She phones the police because she's realized that she is with the
person
kidnapper.
Yeah.
But of course they're in the woods, so the reception's bad.
The phone call dies. By that stage, she's found the little thing. She opens it up. There's like 2 kids in there, and these kind of makeshift cupboard things that are locked up. You can see them through, and they're just like, help us. He's going to come back, blah, blah. So she's like interacting with them. And then it's like that. Yeah. Like, then we got back to this like perfect horror movie. He's back. And then
he's behind you.
Basically, and then like he's put like a plastic bag over her head to like stop oxygen so she passes out. But yeah, it was very like, because it's just that thing as well where like it's such a horror movie thing. It's like you find the people and you're trying to save them, and the bad person comes back, and you're just like,
yeah. And as I say, I think this is where I got annoyed, because like you, I think I could believe that he was raging to discover his wife's ex-lover in
a fit of rage, he killed Todd because he hit him with the baseball bat because he was angry, and he hit him in a spot that killed him. And it's like,
I just feel like when we then discover that he is the abductor of children and has clearly, I believe, done that in the past, because I think the whole idea is that the other person was wrongly convicted because of like corrupt cops.
Because the way that I perceived it is at the in
Oh
the
yeah,
very,
yeah, because it was like, yeah, because the
yeah,
penknife was the clue.
yeah, and so in the very last scene, you've got like him in the past talking to two kids, and as like we're jumping forward a bunch, but like as Alec is being taken to the hospital or whatever, there's like a scene where it's on it. Is he going? Anyway, but it's that thing where then there's like it's like Alec's flashback, and the way that I perceive that is Alec was one of the kids,
yeah,
who
exactly.
was molested by this guy or whatever. And this whole thing, like the reason he went frogging with Mindy and picked this house was so he could like seek revenge on the person he knew was this like the child abductor, but like kept getting away with it because he was this like.
And as I say, I think this is where the film loses it for me, because not that I can't believe that character was the person doing that, because you can imagine that
like it happened, you
corrupt
find
policing and
and
false
me, like
convictions and whatnot.
I love a murder story, and there's so many times where you got a person who was like a serial killer, and they have like a wife and kids, and like no one in their family had any idea. Like that's it's a thing where you've got people who are like depraved and fucked, but they're good sociopaths.
But that's the thing, you'll know this more than me for your true crime obsession. But the thing is, like, his MO, right, is young boys that he abducts, and then he suddenly killed the ex-lover of his partner. Like, so I just felt that if someone was so careful about keeping
that many years,
and then to have this rash, I mean, does that fit psychologically? Like,
I agree. Like that doesn't make sense, and also the fact that he's like sloppy. I mean, you could say that because it's the fact that Mindy finds out that he's the killer because he's got all that shit, all the evidence in that bag, and you could say like, okay, because of his position, maybe he's just assuming that like no one is ever going to be in his car with his bag. And but it's still, to me, it's dumb. Like it's not being.
Oh yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
So it's like, so I agree. So it doesn't, like the fact that he's been like meticulous for like what, because we assume that Alec is what, in his like mid-20s, late 20s, whatever. And if he got abducted as a kid, that means, because he looked like what, like, I don't know, 10. So it's just like, this guy has been, at least the first time he did it was like that many years ago, and now he's doing it again and he's never been caught. It does suggest some kind of like care that goes into like the planning and execution and the covering up, like all this stuff. And you're just like, why? You're right. Like, why would he have a bag full of evidence in his like car? Why would he just like beat a guy to death with a baseball bat? Like, it's not.
It just feels like, oh, this dude will just murder fairly indiscriminately. And I just didn't think that really fit. And so that was the next bit, which just really pissed me off, because I was like, you're not really respecting your audience. Now, I mean, I think, this was a screenplay based on something else that was written. So it was whoever wrote this, but I still was just like, nah. I mean, I don't watch the true crime stuff so much, but I do read a lot of crime things and murder mysteries and whatnot. And I felt that this was all just a little bit clumsy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So then he takes her back to the house. So he's still not going to see his wife and son.
Yeah, I'm right behind you.
I'm right behind you. But of course, fair enough. He's like, well,
now he's busy.
He'd argue. So essentially he's taking her back to the house to stage a break-in or something. He then discovers that people have been in his house. And he sort of stages it as if she has tried to attack him.
That's right, because he stabs himself with a knife at some stage.
Does. And then, so he shoots her.
That's right, yeah.
Basically shoots her, stabs himself with a knife, and then shoots the walls a couple of times too, and then puts the weapon in her hands. Yeah, I think he puts.
So like wipes it down, and then because again, so now he's back to like, I'm a conscientious detective, and he's like, I will wipe my fingerprints off this gun and put it in her hand. Yeah.
But again, all of that seemed a bit wild.
Yeah.
So.
Because Alec had been there, and then he sees him come back with Mindy, who's unconscious. He sees Greg kill Mindy. What is Alec now doing at this stage? I've forgotten.
So Alec comes to attack Greg.
Right.
That's an axe, I believe.
Oh, is that what? That's not the music bit though, or is that the music bit?
It might be.
Are we now explaining the music?
Well, because remember, there's a bit where Greg searches the house and is attacked with an axe by the frog mist figure. So I think this is when the two bits coalesce.
Yeah, okay.
So we left following
You're
Greg,
right. Yeah.
Jackie and Connor's story with him about to be attacked by an axe.
Yeah, and now
we have gone back to that, but we just, you know, have seen it from their perspective, so we've actually seen what's happened to Mindy. But then there's a bit of a rolling about, there's a bit of a fist fight, there's some stabbing, and then Alec ends up with the gun and makes Greg aware that he knows that he's the kidnapper.
Yeah, that's right.
Children. And then there is this bit where Greg may try and say something. He says something about like when I was a kid or something. I don't know, but he tries to explain something.
It was kind of like, yeah, like I perceive that as like a justification as to why he had done all the, you know, why he'd become bad and done all these things.
But he got like maybe 3 or 4 words in, and Alec
just like shot him in the chest. Yeah.
And then so in the meantime, ultimately Spitsky had been told that there had been a call from someone had phoned 911 about the kidnapper, and so he's been, you know, and they can't get in touch with Greg, so he's been trying to find out what's going on. So he arrives,
that's right,
and shoots Alec, doesn't kill Alec, but shoots Alec because he sees Greg lying on the ground. But yeah, then Alec recognizes the detective, says who he is, and then it's made clear to us and everyone that he was one of the two boys that got away. So we met the other dude earlier who had a really bad reaction when Spitsky and Greg turned up, which now makes sense if he recognized Greg. But this dude is clearly very mentally unwell as an adult and being looked after by his parents. So like he could just have been having a bad day.
Exactly.
But now
I don't know what the truth was.
And then Spitsky finds the evidence.
I feel like that happens at the same time, right? So it's like as like Alec is like being wheeled away on his little gurney, and then it's like, so we're seeing him, we've got the flashbacks at the same time where basically the bag full of evidence is in Greg's car and Spitsky finds that, and it's like,
But the nice news is the boys that were trapped in the trailer, they get rescued. And then we just find Jackie driving back, returning home with Connor in the car to see.
It's like police line, police cars, the flashing thing, you know, your standard American movie where there's been something at a house and now police are there.
And then you're right, there's flashbacks showing Alec as a young boy and the other kid that we'd seen later on, earlier on in the film, the 2 boys that had managed to escape, and we see them encountering Greg,
like young Greg who hands.
And then there's 2 cues. There's the, what do you call them? Those little sweet things. You know, all through the film, Alec, when we encounter Alec from the second half of the film, he's eating those
Pez.
Pez, that's the word.
Sorry.
So you see, so if any of this wasn't enough, there was some real obvious cues. So we see Greg meeting these 2 boys with a green penknife, but just to make it extra certain, you know, that one of them is Alec, he's got that still eating those sweets that he was eating clearly at 10 from the same container.
In his defense, like a Pez dispenser lasts for a long time, and Pez is really good.
I was never a fan of Pez.
I used to collect them. Like when I went to live in New Zealand at one stage, I was like, who wants my Pez collection? Because like this is ridiculous. I'm trying to clean out my room, and I had too many, one might say, Karen, too many Pez dispensers. Anyway, it was very like obvious because like here's the pen knifey thing.
Here's a pen knife, but in case it's not enough, here's the Pez dispenser that he still uses. So yeah, and that was kind of it. He's alive, Alec's alive.
And the bit that we haven't brought up, which I did really enjoy, was like how we worked out, because you know we'd said like in that first scene when the kid comes off his bike, it looks like this like force thing, and it turns out he had a fucking string across like the pathway, and he pulled it up, and this kid hit it and went up. I feel like I really enjoyed that bit. I like that. I was like, well, that makes sense, because you know, like I did like that there were all these things that seems like paranormal in some kind of way, and it turns out that it was just this like very normal thing of people secretly living in your house and you didn't
yeah. Everything had an explanation.
I did appreciate that, but yeah, I just found the whole thing was a little bit clumsy for me, Karen.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I didn't hate it.
No.
Wouldn't likely recommend it to anyone though. Like, I think it was trying to be smarter than it was.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it was interesting, but I think for me, I mean, hilarious that I couldn't remember it. I mean, who knows when I watched it the first time? It's only 2019 it was out. It can't have been that long ago. But genuinely couldn't remember having seen it before, and then started it. And you know, it was the bit him lying on the sofa while the pancakes were being made, where I was like, I have definitely seen this. And I did remember that there was a thing about people living in their house, but I could not remember for life of me what was going on. And still I was disappointed at exactly the same points. And that was when it would twig and I'd be like, oh yeah. So like, hilarious that I didn't know I'd seen it, watched it again. But had we not been doing this today, I had remembered enough that it wasn't something that I'd really wanted to watch again.
Yeah.
So I probably I would have been like, oh yeah, I've seen this, doesn't really matter. But as I say, I think it's just, I thought the acting was generally good. I feel like it was, Alex's character is interesting because it's not sympathetic at all, really. And then you get the explanation and you're like, oh yeah. But as you say, it's like you just don't care about any of them. To be honest, so you're left feeling empty at the end.
No, I think you're right. I was gonna say the person I think I cared the most about was Mindy.
Yeah, me too. Mindy was my favorite.
Because it's like, at least,
and Mindy just dies.
Yeah, and she just died, but like at least she seemed like a real person. She made decisions that made sense to me. She still seems like, you know, I was sympathetic and empathetic for like Mindy at like most times, like, you know, sort of like, well, you're a bit of a dick for doing that thing where you stay in people's houses without them knowing, but like you're also homeless and you're trying to do it in a really like respectful way.
Yeah, and I actually felt like, I mean, there's something really scary about the idea that someone's staying in your house without you knowing, but I kind of felt like she was doing it in quite a respectful way. And I just need warmth and I'm going to eat your food. And I mean, like, I think the film was trying maybe to make a point about the extremes, because we've got such a big house with all this wealth and unhappiness and whatnot there, and then this gal that just needed somewhere to sleep and something to eat, and then gets caught up in all this craziness. But just obviously better than a lot of horror we watch. I think that's maybe why I try and hold it to a higher standard when it's actually something that I want to be better than it is.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think we've seen like a lot of like proper trash. Whereas this isn't like, you know, it gives it a go. There are some bits they hit well. There are like a bunch of misses, but like they've like, there's a lot of trying though. And I like the idea, and I just feel like maybe the execution, it's not even the execution that was lacking, because as you said, it's like, I think it's sort of like the script. It's like the idea is fine. And it's just the way that it like, it's like the script, it's the way that they come across, the way that this information is relayed to us, that I just found very frustrating.
And that's the thing, like, it makes me like, I don't mind the jump back in films and whatnot, but it makes me just want to watch something like Gone Girl or something, you know, where I think it's just done much more effectively. And okay,
I agree, because it kind of, we saw all this and then we start from the beginning again and we see up till there, and then we have like, it was just very, I don't know. I think I just, as I said, I got in the beginning, I was like, oh, we're like learning how all these things happened. And then by like, you know, the second reveal, I was like, okay, are we really going to do a fucking play-by-play of the movie?
Yes, we are.
Seen, but from someone else's point of view. And I was at that stage where, I mean, there's many stages where I was like, guys, no, but that one I was like, this is too much. And as I said, it like, I kept checking, and then it like, you know, then the new bit at the end I could watch because it was new information and things were happening, and I was like, this is fine. But there was a good time where like I was checking my phone every 4 to 5 minutes for a good 25-minute period, being like, how many minutes has that been now? It's like, oh, just another 4. You've only been watching it for 4. You've got way longer. And I was like, okay. And then I'd watch it for what I thought was like 10, 15 minutes. It's like, No, that was just another 5. Like, it's not moving as quickly.
And maybe like, I mean, the problem was too that I think I watched it before you did. So, I mean, I couldn't do my blow by blow account
No, you could,
emojis and, you know, I can't
late
tell you
yesterday.
the film via messaging. So maybe, and also I think part of the problem too, like I watched it without having any wine or anything. So also it was like a purely sober watch a film going, oh, I remember that I wanted to like this. Was yeah. But anyway, look, it is what it is, but yeah, Helen Hunt. I want
Look,
to
I'm
see
glad like I
something
always, like,
else.
as we were saying last week, like I have been intending to watch this for a long time. I'm glad I've watched it, but it's like definitely not making that rewatch list because like
Yeah, and it's also like,
yeah.
would we recommend to JP?
No, I don't think I was like, look, if you've run out of all the horrors to watch on all of the streaming things, it's like, oh, if you just want like a bit of like light, poorly executed intrigue on like a Saturday afternoon, then like go your hardest, but just like go in with like super low expectations and then you won't be disappointed.
So that was I See You.
Okay.
So what, I mean, we don't have Dave to choose one. So, but I think Dave can join us next week. So I think, Sophie, it's up to you and I to pick something that we think Dave would like.
Oh, is it from our list of Netflixes?
I don't think Dave would like anything from our list. Although there is one thing in Netflix that he might like that I've been meaning to watch for a while, but I don't think it was on my list for you. It's the #Alive.
I might have seen that. Hold on, let me Google.
I think it's a zombie one. Someone recommended it. It's on my list, but I think it's something that Dave might quite like.
Did we not watch this before we started recording them? I've definitely seen this, but
I've not seen it. No, I've definitely not seen that one.
Okay, I think maybe I've just seen it then if you haven't seen it.
But we don't have to like, so how about I give you the ones? So we've got Dave's list.
Okay, oh yeah, let's do this.
But
I can even come to the Google Drive to help you out a little bit. Oh, look at that. It's like right. It's always in my suggested. I love this. Google Drive. Thank you.
That's it's also too. So look, there's a few that I think other than Dave's list, like things like Let the Right One In, we've been meaning to watch for a while.
Okay. Oh yeah.
#Alive.
Yeah, I reckon I've seen it.
In this that you might watch. I don't know. A lot of these I can't even remember putting on here. This is one. Have you seen His House?
Oh yeah, no, I have. I watched that with JP, I reckon. Is that the one about the refugees?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. That was great.
Yeah, so that was one that I've been wanting to watch again because I thought you and Dave might like it.
Because like a couple of months and I will. It was only because I watched it very recently.
Yeah, no, we'll give it a while, but that one is one that I think he might quite like. Or that was one that you said you've seen that one, the Barbarian Sound Studio, but that was one I thought Dave might like, but I don't know how easy it is to get. I don't know what's one. Or maybe we just pick something from. What do we think? What will we choose for Dave? That's the problem. Or so the Neon Demon.
He's got Neon Demon. I saw ages ago, but I'm happy to watch again. I think I saw that at the cinema. In fact, so as in we'll pick one from yours. We're not picking one from Dave's.
We can pick one from Dave's.
I was going to say, like, if it's something that, like, if we pick it from Dave's, we know Dave wants to see it. Is the only thing I'm thinking. Yeah. But I'm very happy. Like, I will watch all of these, so I don't actually care.
I don't know.
Oh, life is hard.
I know he wants to watch Let the Right One In, which is in mine. But I think he also, see if you pick something like 28 Days Later or Evil Dead or something, he'd be really happy.
The right one, is that the one where there's just like Swedish and then they made an American one?
Yeah.
Again, I think I've seen them both, but not for 1,000 years. Like, I'm happy to watch, like 100% I'd be happy to watch that.
I would be keen to watch that personally too, because I've been reading some novels by the author that wrote this lately. Oh, okay. So I've not read Let the Right One In, but I've read a lot of his other stuff. And it's great and bonkers and super creepy. And I have seen Let the Right One In. But I think it's one that I do believe Dave would quite like that one.
All right, well, let's do that. I presume we're doing original, not.
Yes, yeah.
Correct answer. Yep.
Yes,
let's do
that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's
cool.
do it.
All right. Well, we can't also do the recording stopped or whatever it is that Dave does. But so we just say bye.
Bye.
Bye.